Welcome to Clause 8, the #1 podcast on intellectual property, trusted by top in-house counsel, judges, and policymakers worldwide. Hosted by Eli Mazour, we bring you in-depth conversations with the personality shaping IP. Brought to you by TradeSpace, where ideas take flight.
What is your sense? What is the mood in the patent community now about anything that comes to mind?
Mass confusion, ton of frustration. I think it's just a lot of people who are like, I'm trying to keep up with what's going on and it keeps changing. And so, how do I make sure that what I'm doing today is still going to work in a week? So that's a lot of what I'm talking to people about. And in terms of, if people are happy with, the way the patent office is going, with the PTAB, how many cases they're accepting, kind of what the priorities are. That's just kind of the standard, back and forth that you get with, most administration changes or most director changes. But I know people are also really curious to see what's going to happen if/when John Squires comes in and, what kind of role Coke Stewart would have as deputy director. Like, is she still going to be issuing 500 director discretionary decisions every week? I think that's a lot of what's on people's minds. And also, how is the USPTO going to continue functioning the way it is with decreasing resources and decreasing morale? So those things.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess it's, I think you don't hear the worst of it. I think people are a little, afraid to be very vocal, but it's, people are always frustrated. In the last administration, people were very frustrated with Kathy Vidal and the rules packages and the confusion around that. But, right now, I think with, Coke Stewart is taking like a Trumpian approach to the USPTO and, understandably so, but I think it is causing a lot of people to be a little bit concerned and frustrated. And yeah, the question is how is that going to change when there is a director in place, if it changes or if it, becomes more exaggerated or it pulls back. I'm not sure yet. Yeah.
Will Covey, who's the acting deputy director at the USPTO, he spoke at the one events, and you wrote an article. Somebody actually mentioned it to me yesterday, and it was about him talking about getting back to basics. And I think he was trying to reassure, the patent bar that, we're just trying to fix things, but everything will be good. I guess what was your takeaway from that? And do you think, I guess the question is, the big problem is the backlog, right? The backlog at the USPTO.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how they're making all the examiners focused on getting through this backlog. That's back to basics, but it's not going to be permanent. This is just a temporary solution. So I guess
I think that's working to some extent. It is. I think we just reported on comments that Coke made at a recent conference, and not our conference, a different conference, and the backlog is down a bit, and what she's doing is going to work, right? Because it's she's creating less work in some sense, and they're also employing tools like AI tools and stuff. I'm not quite sure how those are working exactly yet in practice, but there's a lot of stuff that could work. It's just I guess whether it's a long-term solution, whether it's viable long-term. But I think that's definitely the message that's coming out of this administration is bring your challenges up front, strong patents up front, and get back to the basics of, have a strong patent from the get-go kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess they're related, and I don't know if any of you want to weigh in, but I guess there has been some coverage in terms of the morale at the USPTO. I guess people don't think about it, but there's 10,000 patent examiners. And there's a lot of people who kind of there, and I guess what does the impact all of that have? And you've heard political appointees from a previous administration. I think I read in some of your publications come out and say they're messing everything up. I don't know, how's that part of the story has progressed, and has that surprised any of you how vocal, I guess, Kathy Vidal and others from her administration have been?
I mean, I just know Bob Stoll spoke at one of our, the former commissioner of patents a while back, but at one of our conferences, at our annual meeting actually in March, and said that morale was really bad. I mean, that was early on. I don't know what is happening at the moment. There's obviously, a question of attrition under the current, scheme, like because there's already, I think, a pretty high turnover of patent examiners at the USPTO on a regular basis. It's just like how it's always been. But, whether if people have to work in office, return to in-person work and things like that, whether that's sustainable for an agency this big and sort of expansive. So I hear, hearsay kind of that people are unhappy, but then you hear the opposite story from, some of the higher ups. So who knows?
Yeah. Any hearsay that you want to, Dani or Michael, share? It's a podcast, so that's.
Well, I think I told you I try to know what I don't know. And
yeah.
I am probably less plugged in than either Dani or Eileen on the pulse of morale at the patent office right this minute.
I think, Michael, me and you kind of discussed it, but I guess, part of your readership are people, I guess, in the business world. Anything that I guess you're thinking about, or, obviously the big topic has been litigation funding and all these new patent models. Anything that you're kind of hearing or following that you think is interesting from that perspective?
Well, absolutely. The changes to kind of the screening process at the Patent Trial and Appeal Board is just hugely important for whatever side of that you are on, whether you think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread or really detrimental to your business because you're going to be having to defend more patent claims in district court. That's going to be challenged. The first fintive factors are subject to a challenge. It's now pending at the federal circuit, and there are several mandamus actions as well that are more targeted to the latest rollout of what we call discretionary denial processes. I won't call them rules because probably that's even being argued whether they are or aren't rule-like. Yeah. And I try not to weigh in either direction. But that's going to be a huge story. It's millions or billions of dollars are at stake across the whole patent system. And yeah, it affects everybody.